that no matter what happens, you have the same rights as everybody else as a teacher. However, as teachers, there are some limits. The 14th Amendment gives every citizen the right to due process. In other words, if anything happens, you have the right to, process of law, a lawyer, face your accusers, those things, both substantive and process. And I have that a little bit later here, and I want you to bring that in here. So that's going to be our number one here. Number one. No, we are on number 14. Number 14 is this here part about substantive due process and procedural due process. Both things here. List them both and tell what they are. List and tell. Okay, that's 14. Most court cases related to teachers evolve from either liberty or property interests. And there's a question on the test right there. So most court cases with teachers is liberty or property interests. So liberty interests are created in the Constitution itself, but property is found in forms of legal entitlements such as tenure and certification. Okay, and let's talk about what those are. Teachers also have the same responsibilities as other citizens. They must abide by federal, state, and local laws. Now, is that a no-brainer? You're caught on ground smoking marijuana and expect to keep your job, and somebody will defend you saying you should. So it's things like that. As professionals, they must also assume heavy responsibility for educating young people. And this is the debate. That's interesting how it's stated, because we now are in the process of debating whose responsibility is it, how much responsibility goes to the teacher. We discuss specific court cases briefly here to illustrate some of the issues that court decisions relate as aspects of teachers' rights. Summarize. This summary table is not intended to provide a complete understanding. So first of all, the conditions of employment. Let me show you what we're going to do here. I'm going to ask you, and this was 14. This is 15. You're not going to like this one as well, but it's going to work, and that is number 15 is you're going to have one, you're going to make a line, a comment or a line on each of these 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to, don't start now, I'm going to go through and just pick at some of these as we go through them, and you'll bring a little information back for each of these. Okay? Here we go on conditions of employment. Many conditions must be met. You'd be hired. This includes successful completion of a professional prep program. That's me. That's us. Okay? So you have to complete a program. University, there's all kinds of ways, but somebody, someplace has to say, yes, you have completed a program in preparing to be a teacher. And then you have to be credentialed or licensed by the state. Remember, to get a teaching certificate, your university doesn't do that. The state of South Dakota or whichever state you want licensed, because some of you will have license in more than one state, and it could be more than two, depending on your moving around or how close to a state line you teach in or live in or something like that. So those two things, and receive a contract from a hiring school district. Each of these instances, you have the rights established in law, statute, of responsibility. So complete a prep program, get a credential from the state, and receive a contract from the hiring school. So that's the first thing, those three things for that one. Then, teacher certification, primary purpose of certification licensure requirements is to make sure that teachers in the public schools are qualified and competent. The question on the test asks exactly that. What's the idea of that? Certification laws usually require satisfactory completion of prep program, citizenship, no criminal record, and we now check on that. We ask you to declare. You have to know this, and let me tell you why that is. When I first came to DSU 100 years ago, there was a student that had a felony indictment or a felony charge pending. And when it came through, he was student teaching, and they went to the school where he was student teaching and took him off in cuffs. And we went, oh, we can't have that. So now we ask you to declare, do you have anything pending? What previous crimes you've been convicted of and stuff like that. And the most common one I see, of course, is open container. So don't be driving around in the car on the weekends with beer in the car or something like that, where you get busted for that. But nonetheless, that's the whole idea of this. And increasing evidence of instructional effectiveness, and what they're meaning there is now we're asking for things like portfolios and stuff that you have some proof that you're competent. Obtaining a license will be responsible of the state education department. The certifying agency may not arbitrarily refuse to issue a certificate. The courts have ruled that local boards of education may prescribe additional or higher qualifications or requirements, that set requirements are not irrelevant, irresponsible, or arbitrary. I don't know if I knew that a local board could require additional things. And I suppose what that is, it's our preference will be people with master's degree, or people that have foreign language, or people that have technology backgrounds. I'm sure they could have those kind of caveats in their hiring, and they would be legal because they would be relevant and wouldn't be unreasonable or arbitrary. And then a certificate of license is a privilege that enables a person to practice a profession. That's what you get out of it. And that's not a right. Teacher certification are a property interest that cannot be revoked without constitutional due process. So that does happen. We'll talk a little bit about later, that you can lose your license, but only through due process, and the due process that you would have to ask for. If you're fired, and fired doesn't take due process as much as somebody revoking your teaching certificate. And who can revoke it? Who can revoke that license? Okay, and I'm going to put that right here, and put that here, who. Make that part of it. Who can revoke that? What about this employment contract? Usually education and authority, statutory authority to employ teachers. Okay, who does? Who has the authority? The Board of Education at the local school. And again, there's a question on the test that says that. Who has the authority to employ teachers? And now you know. It's the board, and we talked about that in the last chapter. This authority includes the power to enter into contracts. That's what they have the authority to do, to enter into a contract with you. And once it's inked on both sides, it's a legal binding contract that's not easily broken. Some states, only specific members of the school board can sign the teacher contracts. I don't know anything about that. What statutes confer that? This cannot be delegated. Is usually the responsibility of the superintendent to screen and nominate. Okay, and in a big district, it's a lot more than that. And generally, there's a human resource department, and for the most part, in buildings, the person that screens and nominates is the principal or somebody in a building. The board meeting is official session. Yeah, it's officially done at the board. Then the school board, the superintendent would officially bring those nominations to the board, not the principal. The superintendent would bring those. So I guess the superintendent would nominate this, but not necessarily screen them. And then the group gives consensual. And for the most part, at the teacher level, it's usually unanimous consensus. The superintendent says, I nominate these people. I can't imagine a scenario where the board turns them down unless a board member has some personal knowledge, and hopefully that's ahead of that. But where it could get a little more interesting is when there is, for a leadership position, there may be a little more give and take on that. Other than that, I can't imagine that. And then it really falls on the teacher to make sure that you're legally qualified to enter that contract, meaning that you have those credentials and you don't have things pending and stuff. And now, of course, we're doing background checks and all that relate to the same thing. Here, say, for example, a teacher may not enter a legal contract without having a valid teaching certificate issued by the state. And let me say this here, and people get all nervous about this, but you can, if they haven't granted it yet. This is common, happened to me. I signed a contract and started teaching before I had this in my hand. And so what the board says, and school policy normally is you can begin, but we're not going to issue your first check till we have this in our hand. And are cases where there becomes a glitch in the system and it doesn't come through. You didn't have a class that went through or something like that. You want to make sure that doesn't happen. But if you've graduated and the university says graduated, that's the university then forwards that to the state, and that's coming. So my first check was never upheld, but I did not have the contract in my hand the day school started. So that's your responsibility. So teacher tenure, Let's go to the next one, teacher tenure. Tenure are intended to qualify, our laws are intended to qualify security for teachers in their positions to prevent removal of capable teachers by conspicuous action or political motive. So it's very interesting because nobody else enjoys that for the most part. Very few other sectors enjoy that besides teachers. But nonetheless, you're blessed to have that protection, and for the most part, you shouldn't need it. But it's the whole idea was so you couldn't be removed by capricious things. However, currently in many states there are serious challenges to teachers having tenure. Many perceive public employees as having too many benefits, such as paid health insurance, particularly in public funding retirements. It's also a perception not being easy to terminate a poorly performing teacher, and that is the biggest one. Very hard to terminate somebody once they get tenure. In the last few years, these views have been reused in several states by Republican governors and legislators to change tenure and teacher evaluation laws. Okay. In general, tenured teachers enjoy two key rights: protection from dismissal except cause provided in state statutes, and the right to prescribe procedures. Non-tenured teachers may also have due process rights if these are spelled out in state statutes. So there may be some if it's spelled out. If you're non-tenured, meaning before you're tenured. However, most districts, states non-tenured teachers may be non-renewed without any reason being given. If a non-tenured teacher is dismissed and distinguished from non-renewal before the expiration of the contract, the teacher is entitled to due process. So if they still may be enjoyed have this if it's before their contract is up. Well, it means they get fired. That's what that means. It doesn't mean that, if you wait till the contract's expired and you're just not renewed, that's different. But if you're walk to the door, you're under contract and you walk to the door before the contract's up, you then are entitled to due process. If you're a tenured teacher, even if you're not offered a renewed contract, you're entitled to due process. So that's why it's so hard to fire. Here's the case law here. A lot of things about that, but I'm just saying I'm not sure we deserve that protection, but nonetheless we have it. So here is, I'm going to clip this for you, and you're going to bring this in now right here. Let's put it at the bottom of this one here, and this is 10.6, and so this will be number 16. 10.6 figure. Okay. And now this is a little different. I'm going to ask you to do is when you have read this, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points, I'm going to ask you to come back over here and sign your name that you have read and understand this. And so that'll be in the discussion at the bottom for you to do. And so you do that right now. And here I have read and understand. Okay, and you spell understand right. And this is what you write here. And your name will show up there, your username, and so I'll know that it's you. And make sure you do this, and tells me you understand your rights and responsibilities. Okay. And right to bargain collectively. Are you familiar with that term? You are right here now. Okay. So rights to collective bargaining. Let me just back up here. This one, discrimination. Just leave that one blank, just because the discrimination part really is back a couple pages here about hiring, and it doesn't really talk about that much, other than this case said employees as well as students are protected under Title IX, that you can't discriminate based on gender and those things. So just leave that one and just let's move on to collective bargaining here. Okay, so are you familiar with that term? Is that new to you? Just in the past, teacher groups met informally with boards of education to discuss salaries and other teacher welfare provisions. That's an interesting term. Sometimes the superintendent was even the spokesman for such teacher groups. In more recent years, formal collective bargaining procedures have been established instead of a more informal group of teachers meeting the superintendent. Formalized procedures have been established. Now, a bargaining unit, it's called. Know that term, such as a teachers union, and that's often who the bargaining unit is, the teachers union, meets with a representative of the district, such as an assistant superintendent of human resources, and now, of course, their lawyer. Through bargaining, an agreement is reached that applies to all teachers, and hence one of the things that's going to limit you dramatically is the goose got to have the gander, that it all has to be the same all the time. And this is what happened to tenure too, is that it no longer was good or bad teachers, they're all the same. And so you're negotiating a package for everybody, the exact same raises based on your time there. We talked about different salary schedules, those types of things, ways to pay teachers. Well, this one is dealing with a salary schedule, and it's not for one, it's for all. The procedure must comply with National Board of Relations, collective agreement. A contract arrived by a teacher union means that the salaries, working conditions, and other matters within the scope of that bargaining agreement can no longer be decided unilaterally by the school administration. Instead, the contract implies that teachers union and its members will participate in formulating school policies and programs under which they work. And I haven't seen that very often where that was in it, that they'll be involved in school policies. So here's the first, and you're moving right on here. You got one of what is the rights of this. And that means it can't, once that contract is established, it can't be changed. Okay. So now the first one is bargain collectively from its local board of education was this one in Illinois, and here was the union. 1938. Second total local union was this. Okay. And they won the right to bargain, so you'll have that. And then is it being challenged? Beginning 11 of several states, including Ohio, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, the right of teachers to bargain collectively came under major attack. The most visible example unfolded in Wisconsin, where the Governor Walker, Republicans-controlled legislature, passed a law eliminating collective bargaining. The state rationale was a need to balance the budget. However, the collective bargaining agreements with other groups of public employees, such as police and fire, were not treated the same way. Ironically, in 1962 was the first state to pass collective bargaining. Okay, so you have that thing, and that's interesting that there's, for the most part, it is alive and well. And what the contention is also, again, that the very worst teachers get the same raise, the same benefits and stuff as the very best teachers, and hence one of the problems with public education today. But politically, you don't get to talk like that. I'm just saying to you, it's a problem today. It's collective bargaining because it treats everybody exactly the same. And as you know, you are not all the same, just as in any other profession, it's not all the same. All right. Now being challenged, so you have something with that. So you've got that. Let's go to this next one: academic freedom and freedom from elementary and secondary teachers, book banning and censorship. Those there. So what is academic freedom? It's freedom to control what one will teach and to teach the truth as one discovers it without fear of penalty. So in this day and age, this is a huge statement that's very squishy. Teach the truth as one discovers it. Okay? So academic freedom is a freedom to control what one will teach and to teach truth as one discovers it. So do you know what that means? And this is why this whole one is kind of squishy. Academic freedom is thus essentially a principle of pedagogy philosophy. It's been applied to a variety of professional activities. Philosophical positions, however, is not necessarily a legal right. Okay, especially for K-12 teachers. Federal judges have generally recognized certain academic protections in the college classroom. while exhibiting reluctance to do this for elementary and secondary teachers. So if you and I are both doing the same thing, I may have some academic freedom protection and you may not, if they don't like what we're doing, okay? And so that's what, so for the most part, you aren't as protected from this as a college professor. For example, a contracted history teacher was not renewed after he announced that he taught his class from a Marxist point of view. The court ordered that teacher be reinstated in light of the university's failure to advance convincing reasons related to the academic freedoms. In another case, the university instructor claimed that he denied tenure because he refused to change students' grade. He argued that rewarding a course grade was the instructor's right to academic freedom. Because the university had given several valid reasons for non-renewal, the court did not order reinstatement. So they're saying they had other reasons besides that. So those are some examples. You write a little thing of what academic freedom is. Although federal courts generally have not recognized this for elementary and secondary teachers, the most supportive ruling was made in 1980. A case involved a high school history teacher whose contract was not renewed when she used a simulation game to introduce her students to the characteristics of rural life during post-Civil War. She did some role playing and stuff. So here's some things of this. And again, ultimately, you do not enjoy the same freedoms as a teacher, K-12 teacher, as I do. Down here in summary, the academic freedom of the elementary and secondary teacher is more limited than it is for higher ed. First Amendment protections of free speech is increasingly limited in teachers' actions outside the classroom. Before arguing an academic freedom for free speech in the classroom, a teacher must show that he or she did not defy legitimate state and curriculum directives, followed accepted professional norms. So the burden becomes on you here. What does that mean? Well, that just means if you're going to disagree with the curriculum or disagree with what the school's doing or disagree with the school board or superintendent, you better know what you're doing. You better have some grounds. And then we're going to book banning. And I'm just going to let you pick this out here, but basically you can't decide not to use a book or to use a book that the board says that you can't. You need to read this part here. This censorship battleground has to do with limiting access to World Wide Web. Amen to that. What's going to happen to that? This will bite you more. This will come up to you. Social media. Many school districts and states are establishing policies that restrict access to particular types of websites and limited teacher and student uses of social media. New questions related to defining what is meant by responsible use. And who decides? Teachers, principals, school districts, or the state are now occupying governing bodies in the courts. Okay, so who should decide that? Okay, this is a piece on academic freedom. Limited academic freedoms, must professionally be responsible, cannot disregard school board's decision on a textbook, must have freedom to provide supplemental methods, freedom limited when effectiveness jeopardizes. Okay, so here's the other one, a FERPA. We're going to talk about maintain confidential student records in the school, and parents have the rights to view those. Teacher written comments must be shown to students and parents upon request. So you know that no matter where you write it, even if you write a note on your desk, yes, if you write a note about a student on your desk, they have the right if they ask for it. Peer-reviewed assignments under law, and you don't see this anymore. I grew up in a time, and when I was teaching even, this was not unusual that you would grade each other's. It's still allowed, but you see less of this. Teachers might be found liable for negligence or malpractice, and we'll take a little delve into that. So what is these things? You're going to get to come here. Let's see where we at here. We are on this 16. So this is 17. 1, 2, 3. Good here. And this is number 18. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and this is what you need to know about the FERPA. And the family, first of all, I want you to put that acronym in there as FERPA. family education rights. And here's what you need to know. In 74, Congress passed a family education privacy rights, which is also called the Buckley Amendments. Put that in there also, FERPA and Buckley Amendments, because you're going to get hit with that sometime, and I want you to be familiar with that term, the Buckley Amendments. This statute addresses the maintenance of confidentiality of student records. This statute does not prohibit teachers, principals, and other education professionals from making student information available for educational purposes, as long as they take steps to maintain privacy. Even today, many school administrators, teachers, and most parents do not realize that parents now have the right to view their children's educational records. You have the right as a parent to view anything written about your child. Many teachers are not aware that their written comments, which they submit as part of a student record, must be shown at parents' request. Now, they have to request to see anything, and of course, for the most part, they don't know they have that right, or don't know what to ask for or what, but they have that right. Or in response to a student request, if the student is 18 or older. Know that. A student can do it if they're of age, 18. Key points teachers should know that FERPA are represented in 10.7. Let me just jump over there and look at that. Okay. Let's clip that also, and let's make that number 19 here. And that is clip 10.7. I think it's important that you have that also. So how about grading papers? Well, there was a court challenge to it, is why we're even talking about it. And it was under this thing of FERPA. The suit was funded by the Rutherford Institute. The Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit Court agreed with Oklahoma Parent that students should not grade other students' work. And in this 2002 Supreme Court was unanimous in overturning the circuit court. Said that privacy law was directed at records kept in a filing cabinet in records room or on a permanent secure, not grades in the classroom paper. So it was allowed by the courts. Correcting in classrooms can be as much a part of the assignment as taking a test itself. The way to teach material again in new context, it was now show students how to assist. So it was allowed. So that was a court case. It went to the Supreme Court. So what about responsibilities and liabilities? The different things here. So here we're going to have a look at these, and this will be number 20. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things here. So more than 55 million students enrolled in elementary and secondary schools. It's almost inevitable that some will get injured or educational activities. Each year, some will occasionally lawsuits in which plaintiffs seek damages. Such suits are often brought against both the school district and their employees. Legal actions seeking monetary damages for injuries are referred to as actions in tort. Technically, a tort is a legal wrong. I think there's a question on the test about what a tort is. An act or the omission of the act, and that's the thing you have to know. It can be an act, or not doing your job as the other act. All right, put that in there. That violates the private rights of the individual. Actions in tort are generally based on alleged negligence. The basis of tort liability or legal responsibility is negligence. Understanding the concept of negligence is essential. Legally, negligence is a failure to exercise or practice due care. Okay, so that's what you want here. No, we're not to negligence yet. Put negligence under this one. Okay. Negligence of teacher supervision of pupils is an important topic that includes supervision of the regular classroom, departure of the teacher from the classroom, supervision of the playground, and supervision of extracurricular activities. Liability, on the other hand, is responsible for negligence, responsible for the failure to use reasonable care and such things. So liability and negligence. You want to describe tort, negligence, and liability. All under here. So here's the thing with that, folks. You have a responsibility, and the biggest one I've heard of is this, that you're not where you're supposed to be. If you're supposed to be in the classroom, you're in the classroom. And as a rule, it is a wonderful idea to never leave your class unattended. If there's students in the classroom, you need to be in there or have somebody else in there. That's when things happen, even the low-level stuff. My experience was, that's when you step out of the room to do something, that's when the big bully says to the little guy, we get out of here, I'm going to kick you, you know what. And then you come back in the class and the little bully says, the big bully's going to beat me up. And the big bully said, I never said that. And you have no grounds, you weren't there. That's when we decide to throw a pencil across the room that hurts somebody, or that's all kinds of things happen. So if you're supposed to be supervising buses or the gym or before or after school or lunch or recess, you need to be there, or this is where this comes into play. Okay. It's a responsibility of doing your job. So what about educational malpractice? Well, culpable neglect by a teacher is in the performance of his duties called educational malpractice. As you will see in the sample of cases described next, the courts have addressed many things. So here is each of these. You read these of all these things here. Negligent teacher and then field trip negligence, and make a statement about each of those. And then a thing about insurance. School districts to have this. Cost of school districts liability insurance increase this. But here's what it is. Even if there's a mistake, somebody gets hurt, if you're doing your job and have your stuff in working order, for the most part you'll be covered. If you're negligent, insurance still doesn't help you. You may get some financial compensation, but you may lose your certificate over it. And so don't be scared. I'm just saying, do your job. Be where you're supposed to be. Be responsible for what you're responsible for. For the most part, I tell you, another crazy place is in the gym. If you're a gym person, my goodness sakes, kids should not be in there touching equipment, doing anything without you there. And sometimes they can still get hurt, but you're on a lot more solid ground if you're where you're supposed to be, instead of in your office or in the teacher's lounge or getting a cup of coffee or a Coke or something like that. That's when these things happen. That's when the weights fall on somebody. That's when somebody gets hit with a shot put. Another, probably the most dangerous place potentially, is the shop. If you're a shop person or there's kids in the shop. So just be where you're supposed to be. Okay. Ooh, next part, social media. The ever-increasing variety of forms and use of technology are sources of promising practice for teaching and learning. They also are potential sources of problems for teachers and students. First of all, email. One of the most ambiguous forms of technology is email. Ubiquitous. It has become the basic form of communication between administrators, teachers, and between teachers and other teachers. Teachers may use email to communicate with students, parents, and problems can arise when the send key is hit before the message is carefully composed, or by sending the email to all instead of applying to the original. These mistakes can create embarrassing moments, but some can have more serious consequences. Okay, let me tell you another thing that's happened. It happens more frequently, and it happened to me. I'm emailing back and forth with somebody on a topic, and suddenly I decide to add somebody else to bring them into the conversation, but I didn't intend for them to see everything that was before that without cleaning that up. That was a problem for me once, but nonetheless, I don't have to tell you, this can be a problem, how this can happen, right? So one is an employer monitoring. You may wonder whether it's legal or school district to monitor the emails you may whether if it's illegal for a district to monitor the emails of its teachers or a college where you're studying teacher ed. If you use the college or school district email, then the answer is yes. And you learn the hard way, learn the easy way. Don't use school email or school computers for your personal stuff. You can have a problem if inappropriate content is discovered in your emails or your computer. For example, ultimately, school officials are finding pornography on teachers at school computers. Yikes! But here's the other thing. Here's he said, she said, all kinds of things with this. So just know I mean, all your emails are monitored. Of course, I don't care where it is now with the federal government's monitoring everybody. It's all being monitored. But if you're doing inappropriate things, and even if you're not, you just want some separation between you and the school because they have the right. And here's what will happen too. You may go a long time and not have a problem, and all of a sudden there's some little problem with something, and they grab your computer and look back through everything that you've ever done or touched on it. And they can't, it's theirs, whether you're a student or the teacher. Well, how about social networking risks? Using cell phones to take and share photos as well as extensive social networking through the Facebook and Twitter are causing concern and serious problem. And again, you have to have been under a rock someplace not to be aware of this. Content that is of personal and sexual nature will become the basis for dismissal. And again, please tell me I don't have to tell you this. It always seems to me that people feel like it's not going to be them. They're not going to get caught. And they always do. And there's some, some very famous cases of people texting and emailing bizarre things around. Even the accidental discovery of inappropriate content can lead to your fired. So keep the tips in 10.8. And I am going to, of course, clip this for you also to bring in. And this is going to be here. Tell me what number we're on. We're on number 21. Is 10.8 clip. Okay. Again, you know about sexting and what that is, and for some reason we have this unbelievable desire of teachers to do sexting with students. Sent nude photos of themselves with lewd exhibition of the boys who received the photos was in a possession of child pornography, and that's what it is. And so here you get to this "Who is Right" feature on this, and so that will be number 22. Who is right? Discussion. Let me go find that here. Should students be prosecuted as sex offenders for sexting? And I'm going to come back here and put that in here. And you can't respond until you have read both of these scenarios. Yes and no, and then you respond. Okay. Misuse of social networking by students may be viewed as happening through the innocence of youth. Similar behaviors by teachers are inexcusable, and I would agree with that. And that's where I would say to you, don't walk, run. Do not get near this. For example, the number of incidents of teachers using technology with students in inappropriate and illegal ways is increasing. The recent case in Los Angeles Elementary School of a teacher taking bondage-style pictures of children in a case in point. The teacher had been teaching for more than 30 years. He is now charged with 23 committing lewd acts with children. Unfortunate part of the Los Angeles case, as well as many others, is that nothing was done when one of the more of the children reported the teacher behavior to other teachers. Adults have a legal responsibility not only to report, but to make sure that these misdeeds are investigated. And what about cheating in technology? Fortunately, several websites are available to use to teach. Let me just read this whole thing. Another increasing challenge for teachers is to determine when students are using technology to cheat. Instances of using the cell phone while taking a test to snap pictures of test items, having an outsider call in the correct answers are more common than teachers can't want to believe. Plagiarism on term paper is another problem. Unfortunately, several websites and services are available to check for this. Teachers must be vigilant in classroom and unfortunately suspicious how students are using social media. So that is cheating, and you have a little something about that. Okay. Student rights and responsibilities. Students have this: the right to a public education, to alienate homeless children, a right to sue, the right to have a due process. What about suspension, expulsion, and free speech? And so we have all these to talk about. So let's get at it. And here, this will be number 23. Here's number 23. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 dress codes for each of those. And this is number 24. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these. All right. What a response. The rights of students have changed since the 60s. Before 69, school authorities clearly had the final say as long as they decided what seemed reasonable. A key Supreme Court 69 changed the balance by concluding that students do not shed their constitutional rights of freedom of speech and expression at the school door. Going further on behalf of students, in 75, the court decided that the principle of due process applied. These decisions led to several successful student challenges to school policies and procedures. However, since the late 80s, court decisions have moved back towards increasing the authority of public school officials. Along the way, students' life has become more complex, not only because of such threats as increased use of drugs, presence of weapons and gangs, but also because the diverse multicultural and shifting political context has made it more difficult to determine what is and what is not appropriate. And I think social media has made this compound this times 10 more recently. To illustrate some of the issues that related to the students' rights, to look at specific court cases. Okay, here's that. Students' rights as citizens. Okay. First of all, series of court decisions. All children in the United States have been granted the opportunity to opportunity for a public school education, and you are just all you have to write under students' rights is FAPE. Remember what that stands for? Put FAPE and put what it stands for. Okay. Students' right to an education. Children in the United States have a right to an education. The right is ensured by many states' constitutions. That's where the guarantee comes from, the state constitutions. It's further defined by court decisions and how it is interpreted to mean that each child has equal opportunity. So it also has the courts. It is not without certain prerequisites. Citizens alone does not guarantee free education. Students that establish a public school system also generally, those are cases there. This is cases for students' rights, long, and it's been probably bantered more than anything else in the courts in education. Also establish how operating costs will be met. Real estate taxes. This residence does not mean the student, parent, or guardian must pay real estate tax. It means that the student must live in the school district in which he or she wants to attend. Residence then in a prerequisite to the right to a FAPE within a specific school district. Okay. Alien and homeless children have a right to school. Okay, that the children of illegal aliens had a right to a free or public education. Did you know that? Alien is a weird term, but if you're undocumented or still are entitled to a FAPE. And not everybody agrees, but this was the Supreme Court ruled in 82. Although today some continue to question this right, the courts have been consistent, holding that equal protection clause applies to all. In addition, the court considers impact society of the future educate all students. Related problem, more than 500,000 homeless children in the United States. And again, I wonder where they're at, because access to public school usually requires residence, address, parent or guardian, as well as transportation. Okay. Congress addressed the growing problem in 87. And I'm not sure why Congress would do that, why the states wouldn't do that, or even the locals, but Congress. McKinney Homeless Assistance Act on the test, which requires that each state educational agency shall assure that each child of a homeless individual and each homeless youth have access to a FAPE. The law was amended in 1990 to require each school district to provide services to the homeless that are comparable to others. And then the students have a right to sue. I'm going to let you pick that one, and the students' rights to due process. I'm going to let you do that one. And in the due process, you have to know in local parente, there's a question on the test about in local parente. Can you say that for me? Because I love saying that word, in local parente. It means in place of the parent. Procedural due process in case of suspension and expulsion. You get to figure this one out. But what all it is, you're entitled to a hearing before you're expelled or suspended. You have the right to face your accuser. You can get a lawyer if you like, especially if you think you've been wronged. So what is that substantive due process of students' rights to free speech? Let's see where we're at here. Right here, free speech. Tinker versus Des Moines in its school. If you want to figure unwind that, the Tinker case is probably almost like Brown versus the board. Court designate that decision does not concern aggression behavior. The decision did not make it clear whatever the age. In a more recent Supreme Court decision to have at least narrowed the breadth of Tinker, the course involved Matthew Frazier, a high school senior in a school outside Tacoma. In the spring of '83, Frazier was suspended from school for 2 days after he gave a short speech at school assembly nominating a friend for a position in the student government. School officials argued that Frazier's speech contained sexual innuendos, provoked other students to engage in disruptive behavior, and unfavored the school setting. Held that the Frazier punishment violated his free speech rights and First Amendment. The court appeals Ninth Circuit decision holding Frazier's speech was not disruptive under the standards of Tinker. However, the Supreme Court reversed the decision in majority opinion. In this, Berger wrote, the determination of a manner of speech classroom and assembly is this. So the bottom line for all of this is it cannot be disruptive for free speech. It cannot be disruptive. Students' rights and responsibilities in school. Let's go to students. Well, how about dress codes? Well, first let me give you this. The right to privilege of children to attend school also depends on their compliance with rules and regulations. And this is what makes it more squishy. You know why? How about a homeless kid? We just talked about the rules. You had to educate them. What if they don't behave? How about the kid that's not documented? And they're out of compliance with the school, can they be suspended? And here's one that really lifts this up. What about the kids that are on IEPs, considered to be disabled, and they don't comply? Can they be suspended? This is where this gets a little murky. To ensure day-to-day orderly operation of school, boards of education have the right to establish reasonable rules. And this has been challenged in courts, is what is reasonable. Controlling pupils and their conduct. Boards' actions have been challenged in numerous instances. However, challenges have concerned questions and stress as dress codes and grooming, corporal punishment, rights of married students, abuse and neglect, publications, freedom of expressions, those. So first of all, dress codes. And this is a long one. I don't hear about this so much anymore, but for a time back in the 60s and 70s, it was a huge deal with it, especially with the grooming, haircuts, beards, those things, all relaxed now. Lower court cases appealing with the grooming have been decided in some instances in favor of the Board of Ed, in support of their rules and regulations, and in other instances in favor of the student. So it's not clear cut. Dress codes is one that's not clear cut. A general principle seems to be that the dress and grooming do not incite cause disruptive behavior. And so that's what you would use to make this determined, or a safety problem, they're likely to support the student. Dress codes, once very much in vogue, are less evident today. And that's what I see. Schools are a lot more relaxed about how kids dress. Now, when I was teaching middle school, they couldn't have alcohol or any kind of drug thing on them. If they did, they had to either turn the shirt inside out, or we had old shirts they could put on. The thing that we didn't allow back then was crazy, that was disruptive, is that all of a sudden they would come with very fluorescent colored hair. And the principal in our building at that time felt that was very disruptive. So if they came with fluorescent hair, they stood in the bathroom in the office with a bottle of shampoo, and they shampooed it over and over until it was gone. And we had kids stand there an hour, just keep re-shampooing their shirts. But they did get their arms around it. Here I'm going to go on here. The Supreme Court has yet considered a so-called long hair case. Federal courts in every circuit have issued rulings in these cases. Half of them found regulations on their hair unconstitutional, and half upheld them. So length of hair was big. It says 300 cases. Different courts handed up to 300 cases about the length of hair, and you don't see anything about that anymore. Nobody even recognizes length of hair. But when I was in school, that was a huge deal. Schools all had very strict guidelines for length of hair, which are completely absent now. If there's a trend, it's the students have won most of the cases in grooming, dress codes and grooming. Okay, corporal punishment. I'm going to let you look at corporal punishment and read it. Sex discrimination. Has to deal with Title IX, so you bring that in. This is an interesting one you may be not familiar with, is marriage and pregnancy. I want you to read through that and make a statement about that. We talked about child abuse and neglect, and so you put something in there about that. Student publications, lots are written about this. People printing inappropriate things. Had to do with the school newspaper, which doesn't seem to have gone away. We don't see as much as there was when I was in school about printing things in the newspaper. And again, for one thing, it's not a source, I believe, it's not as big a source of information to students because they have so much social media. And so who cares what's in the school paper? We don't read it anyway. Students, in this case, in 1970, students were expelled for distributing a newspaper named Grass High, which the students produced at home, which criticized school officials and used vulgar language. So when that showed up, here's what they did. They criticized, and this is probably the most famous case in student publication. Students were expelled. Federal court in Illinois supported the board, but appeal court, the 7th Circuit, reversed the decision. The school board was not able to validate student disruption. See, they said it didn't disrupt. The expelled students were entitled to collect damages. Here's the one from '88, Lancaster Hazelwood versus here. How about rights of students with disabilities? Come here. And we've kind of hit this already, but they're really entitled because of 94-142, entitled to the same education. This here, I want to hit this one a little bit because this will jump up at you more, and that is students and locker searches. And the image is very interesting, and that is the drug dogs, and much maligned, much debate and challenges to having the dog mark the lockers. And if you're not familiar with that, we used to have that in school several times a year when I was teaching in the middle school, and the dogs were sensitive to smell of drugs. Specifically marijuana. Most courts have refused to subject public school searches to strict Fourth standards. In general, the Fourth Amendment protects individuals from search without warrant. Many lower courts, however, have decided in favor of a more lenient interpretation of that. The rationale that school authorities are obligated to maintain a disciplined and sound educational environment, responsibility along with their local parente powers, gives them the right to conduct searches and seizure and contraband on reasonable suspicion without a warrant. First, however, school and have only a search for evidence that a student has violated the school rule. Must be a valid rule and law in place. But drugs, the courts have really refused to mess around with anything that has to do with this because they have the right to have an orderly place and a safe place. School authorities do not need a warrant to search a student locker or a student vehicle. Did you know that? Because they have the right. And we see a lot of students getting in trouble when they have stuff in their car in the parking lot. Okay. So a locker and vehicle. So just know this and tell your students this. Their expectation of privacy in school is about nothing. On their computer, anything like that. For search of students' person, however, courts have a lot much tighter, and that is on their person. And what the rule is, the closer to their body, the more privacy they're allowed. Where a reasonable suspicion exists, a school official actions will likely be upheld. Reasonable suspicion exists when one has information that a student is in possession of something harmful or dangerous. And again, there's a lot more leniency when now that there's drug is so prevalent. Money, a list of colored rolling papers. The second consideration may be the search of a student's person is conducted. School officials are advised to have students remove contents from their clothing rather than having a teacher or administrator remove it. Okay. Thing on peer sexual harassment. You'll review that and write about it. What is this one? I'm going to clip students' rights to and give it to you. And so that's going to be a number 24. And that is 10.9. Number 25 is clip 10.9 as goes here. All right. Then emerging challenges. There are likely to be new cases related to drugs, testing, search of weapons, assaults. Assaults is one too, is different. We're not quite sure what to do with it. Policies, administrative directives, court cases appropriate to this. All right. Chapter 10, legal system. And now here I give you bonus. The rest of this is just for you. It's not the test or on the lecture, but it will be a service to you in the future as a teacher and prospective teacher. No extra charge on this. And let me just flip through it quick. Just a synopsis of the due process. That's all about due process. Learners' rights and responsibilities. Again, tinker. Can't be disruptive. Can't be critical if not disruptive. Can't censor. Freedom of conscience for teachers. Here's search and seizure. 4 basic tests for search and seizures. Teacher certification. We did talk a little bit about that. About gaining employment. Teacher contracts. Tenure and continuing employment. 6 ways you could lose your job. And then teachers' rights. And we reviewed some of that already. All right, civil rights, lifestyle issues. All right, child abuse, reporting child abuse. Okay. You get all that for free.